Well, China implementing UN sanctions on North Korea, but warning that it will defend its interests if the U.S. tries to harm trade ties. We go now to former Republican Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore. Good to see you, Governor. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
Well, pick up where we just left off. Could President Trump's trade pressure lead to even more problems with China or disagreements?
Well, listen, I think that the United States has a perfect right to review our trade policies with China. I think that we have to do that in our own national interest. The Chinese need to understand that we're going to demand that there be free trade between our two countries. Our deficit is over $300 billion. It's something that we didn't pay attention to during the war on terror. Now it's time to actually pay attention to it. Furthermore, the idea that perhaps that they're going to try to leverage against North Korea on this is part of this North Asian political game that's going on that the ambassador addressed just a few minutes ago. China's not doing us any favors by helping us out on North Korea. They know that the United States is prepared to do what's necessary to prevent them from having a nuclear missile. It is in China's interest to cooperate with us on embargoes and not try to leverage us on other trade issues.
Well, I think this is a really important point that you just made, because they're not doing us any favors. North Korea is a threat to the world, not just to the U.S., but certainly it's a bigger threat to China than to the U.S. at this point. But what about the president today authorizing an inquiry into China's alleged theft of intellectual property? Let's be honest here. We know that they've been stealing our intellectual property for years, and this is the first time we're doing an investigation? Really?
Yeah, it's about time, isn't it?
Wow.
It seems to me that the people of the United States rose up and said, look, we want to see change here. We want to see somebody that's actually looking after the interests of the United States. I don't think, Maria, that means that we act in contrary to the interests of our allies, but it does mean that we have to have somebody that's actively making sure that we're not being taken by bad actors in other countries, and that includes China, if they're stealing our intellectual property. It's not appropriate. China has to come in and be part of the Concord of Nations, and that means they shouldn't fear an inquiry that talks about whether they're being bad actors or not.
Yeah, no, you make a great point, and it's interesting to see the tough talk coming out of this administration is so different than what we've heard in the past as it relates to just this issue, among others, intellectual property. Let me switch gears, ask you about Charlottesville. Obviously, my condolences to you and your colleagues as former governor of Virginia. Your reaction to the protests there?
Well, first of all, it's a terrible thing to see white supremacists coming in and trying to use these statues issues as some type of white supremacy type of standby. We condemn all white supremacy attitudes and approaches on organizations, whether they're Nazi-type organizations or white supremacist organizations. That can't be the leading edge of any kind of discussion in the state of Virginia under any conditions. When I was the governor of Virginia, we worked hard to go the opposite way, to try to draw people together. When I was the Attorney General, we stopped church burning across the South, together with my colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans. When I was the governor, I stood up for higher education in the African-American traditional universities. We can do things to bring people together, and this kind of conflict is not appropriate in the state of Virginia or anywhere else in the United States. Well,
you know, you make a really important point there. What should the president do to bring people together in that regard, Governor? I mean, you see that he's got, you know, they hate him on the left, they hate him in the media, within the Republican Party he's got challenged. What is he going to do to bring people together?
Well, exactly. And I think that we can't allow people in the media, and some of the people, not you, Maria, some people in the mainstream media are trying to hype this thing up in order to create division.
That's right.
We Virginians understand very well, with our background and our history, that we all live together to move our state forward and ultimately to move the nation forward. And that means that we have to find ways to work together and to discuss these kinds of issues. That's what I did when I was the governor.
All right. We will leave it there. Governor, good to see you. Thanks so much for weighing in.